I always believed that family meant everything. That no matter how hard life got, your parents would always be there. Not just to cheer for your wins but to hold your hand through the tough parts too. That's how I was raised, or at least that's what I thought growing up. My parents were always talking about loyalty, about sticking together, about how family comes first. And I took those words seriously. I respected them deeply. I never argued with them, never raised my voice. Even when I didn't agree, I kept quiet. That's how much I trusted them. My younger brother was always the center of their world. He could do no wrong. I noticed it even when we were kids, how they gave him more attention, more praise, more forgiveness. But I never let it get to me. I convinced myself that love isn't divided, it multiplies. I believed there was enough love for all of us. So I stayed the quiet, responsible daughter. The one who helped clean the house without being asked, the one who remembered birthdays and sent flowers, the one who never wanted to disappoint. When my brother announced he was getting married, my parents lit up like it was their own wedding. The excitement in their voices, the way they started planning, the money they began spending, it was like a dream they had waited years for. They booked the most expensive venue in town, flew in relatives, picked out matching outfits, and even hired a private chef for the weekend. I helped them with the arrangements, smiling through it all. I thought, this is what family does. We show up for each other. But I didn't know then that the rules I followed all my life only applied to me. The wedding became the talk of the town. My parents spared no expense. They were glowing with pride as they showed off every little detail they had planned. The venue was an old restored mansion with white pillars and chandeliers hanging from high ceilings, the kind of place people only dream of getting married in. They paid nearly $25,000 just for the venue alone. And that was only the beginning. My mother ordered designer outfits for herself, for my father, and of course for the bride and groom. Thousands of dollars were spent on jewelry, shoes, accessories, and even custom-made gift boxes for every guest. My father booked a luxury hotel for out-of-town relatives, and not just a few rooms, the entire floor. He didn't want anyone to feel unimportant. They even hired a photographer from another state and flew him in just because someone on Facebook recommended him. I watched all of this from the sidelines. I helped arrange the flower deliveries. I drove my mom to her dress fittings. I stayed up late helping them finalize the guest list and organize the seating chart. I made sure the caterers had every detail they needed, down to the specific wine pairings for each meal. I did it all without a single complaint because I truly believed I was doing the right thing. I wanted my brother to have a beautiful wedding, and I wanted my parents to feel proud. But somewhere deep down I started to feel invisible. No one asked me how I was managing work or if I needed a break. No one even thanked me. I didn't expect grand praise, but a little acknowledgement would have been nice. When the wedding gifts were being bought, Rolex for the groom, a diamond set for the bride, I stood there quietly holding the bags, watching them swipe their cards without hesitation. They spent over $100,000 in just a few weeks like it was nothing. But I still told myself, it's okay. This is their son. This is their moment. I thought my turn would come someday, a moment when they'd show up for me the same way. I didn't realize that moment would come much sooner, and their silence would be louder than I ever imagined. It was a morning just like any other. I remember it so clearly. My baby was in my arms, cooing softly, her little fingers wrapped around mine. I had just finished feeding her and was about to put her down for her nap when I noticed something. A small cough at first, then a wheezing sound that didn't seem right. At first I told myself it was just a cold, nothing to worry about. But as the hours passed, her breathing became labored and she started to look pale. My heart raced with panic. I took her to the doctor that afternoon. The diagnosis hit like a punch to the gut. The doctor's words felt like they were in slow motion. "It's a severe condition," she said, her face serious. "Your baby needs surgery and it needs to happen fast. We'll need to run a few more tests to confirm the exact nature of the issue, but this is critical." I felt my world shatter in that moment. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was look at my baby's fragile face, her innocent eyes wide with confusion, not understanding what was going on. And there I was, a mother, terrified and helpless. I sat in that sterile room holding my baby close, trying to keep myself together for her sake. The doctor handed me an estimate for the surgery. It wasn't just a small amount. It was a fortune. Thousands of dollars, and that didn't even include the aftercare or the medications she'd need afterward. My hands shook as I read the figure, and my stomach turned with the reality that I didn't have that kind of money. I had never felt more alone in my life. How was I supposed to pay for this? How could I possibly find that kind of money in time? In that moment, a thought crossed my mind. My parents. They had always been there for me in the past. They were well off and I had always been their little girl. Surely they'd help me now. After all, this was their grandchild, their flesh and blood. I dialed their number with trembling fingers, my heart pounding in my chest as I explained the situation to them. Mom, Dad, my baby needs surgery and it's urgent. The hospital says it could save her life, but we need a lot of money and I don't have enough. I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying not to break down. Please, I don't know who else to turn to. Can you help me? Can you lend me the money? I waited for them to respond, my chest tight with hope. I had always imagined that in times like this they'd come through for me. But what came next wasn't what I expected. It wasn't love or compassion or understanding. It was silence, followed by a cold, distant response. We've spent so much already on your brother's wedding. This isn't our responsibility, my mother said. You're an adult now. You'll figure it out. My father's voice was the same, indifferent and emotionless. We've done enough, haven't we? The phone call ended with a hollow silence on my end. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. How could they say that? How could they not care? My baby, my flesh and blood, was fighting for her life and they didn't even blink. In that moment, the weight of their rejection hit me harder than anything I'd ever felt before. They weren't just denying me financial help. They were denying my child. My baby. And I couldn't understand it. I hung up the phone, my heart broken into pieces, and I cried like I never had before. How could they? How could they turn their backs on us like this? I don't know how long I sat there staring at the phone after that call ended. The words echoed in my mind, replaying over and over again like a broken record. We've spent so much already on your brother's wedding. This isn't our responsibility. I kept repeating it in my head, unable to make sense of it. Was this really happening? Was this really my parents, the people who always told me that family sticks together through thick and thin? They were supposed to be the ones I could count on, especially when things were this bad. But instead they had just slammed the door in my face. I felt numb, disconnected from reality. My baby's fragile life was at risk, and all they cared about was the money they had spent on a wedding. It wasn't just about the money, though. It was about love, it was about family, it was about them caring for me when I needed them most. And in that moment they didn't. I needed answers. I needed to understand. I couldn't just let it go like this. I decided to go to their house, to face them in person and beg them for the help my baby desperately needed. I couldn't do this on my own. I had no one else to turn to. I was drowning and they were the lifeboat that I thought would never let me down. But now they felt like the ones pushing me under. When I got to their house, my heart was pounding. I knew I had to keep calm, but every part of me wanted to scream, to demand that they help me. I knocked on the door and my mother answered with that familiar smile of hers, as if nothing was wrong. As if her daughter wasn't standing here, heartbroken and desperate. Mom, I need to talk to you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She invited me in, but I could tell right away that the warmth I once felt in their home was gone. There was an awkwardness in the air, something thick and uncomfortable. My father was sitting in his usual armchair, flipping through the newspaper, his attention completely elsewhere. My mother led me into the living room where I sat down on the couch across from them, clutching my purse tightly. Mom, Dad, I started, my voice shaking. I don't know what to do. My baby is in critical condition. She needs surgery. The doctors said it's urgent. I can't afford it and I need your help. I looked at both of them, my eyes pleading, hoping that this time they would see how serious it was, how terrified I was. But instead of the compassion I expected, I was met with coldness. Sweetheart, my mother began, her voice detached. We've already spent over $100,000 on your brother's wedding. We've given enough. She glanced at my father for reassurance, but he didn't even look up from his newspaper. You're an adult now, you've got a family of your own. You need to take responsibility for it. We can't keep bailing you out. I couldn't believe it. I sat there, frozen, as my heart shattered. My throat tightened and I could feel the tears stinging my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Please, Mom. Please, Dad. It's our baby. Don't you care about her? This isn't about me. It's about her life. You have to help us. I've always been there for you. I've always respected you. Please, I need you now. I was begging. I hated myself for it, but I had no other choice. Every part of me wanted to shout at them to demand they understand. But I kept my voice low, trying to hold it together. I couldn't believe I was even asking. But instead of the love and support I was so desperate for, they gave me nothing but indifference. "I'm sorry," my mother said coldly. "But we've done enough. You're an adult now. It's your responsibility to figure it out." My father finally looked up from his newspaper, his face as emotionless as ever. "Your mother's right. You'll manage. You always do." I sat there, stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to hold on to the fragments of my dignity, but in that moment I felt like I was nothing to them. Just another problem they didn't want to deal with. They weren't the parents I had believed in, not anymore. They were strangers to me. They had already spent so much on my brother's wedding and I was just left behind. I wasn't even worth their help. With that, they turned away. My mother went back into the kitchen to prepare dinner, and my father resumed flipping through the newspaper as if I hadn't even spoken. It was like I was invisible. Like I didn't matter at all. I couldn't breathe. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of their rejection pressing down on me. "I guess that's it then," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll figure it out." And with that, I walked out of their house, my heart broken into a million pieces. They didn't even try to stop me. They didn't care. I had never felt so alone in my life. The next few days felt like a blur. The weight of the situation bore down on me with every breath I took. My baby needed the surgery and there was no time to waste. I couldn't afford the procedure and my parents had made it clear they would not be helping me. I was left to figure this out on my own and the reality of that was crushing. But somehow through the heartbreak I found a flicker of determination. I wasn't going to let my baby suffer. I couldn't. I started working overtime at my job, taking on extra shifts wherever I could. I barely slept, running on nothing but adrenaline and the raw fear that gripped me every moment I wasn't doing something to help her. I poured every ounce of my energy into earning what I could. But no matter how many hours I worked, no matter how many shifts I picked up, it still wasn't enough. The total amount needed for the surgery was beyond my reach, and with each passing day the sense of urgency grew. In the midst of it all, I remembered the jewelry my grandmother had passed down to me, pieces that had been in our family for generations. They were beautiful, worth a lot, but they were also irreplaceable. I never thought I'd part with them, but what choice did I have? I took them to a pawn shop and sold them for whatever I could get. It wasn't even close to the full amount needed, but it was a start. It was a sacrifice, but I told myself it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was saving my baby. I also reached out to friends and even strangers. I was so desperate I couldn't care about the embarrassment anymore. I set up a fundraiser online, pouring my heart into the description, explaining everything that had happened, how my baby's life was at risk, and how I was doing everything in my power to get her the surgery she needed. I shared it on social media, hoping that someone would see it and care. To my surprise, the donations started trickling in. It wasn't much at first, just a few $100s here and there, but it meant everything to me. Strangers, people I had never met, were helping me. There was kindness in the world after all. People were opening their hearts and their wallets to save my baby. I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could pull this off. But all the while the emptiness inside me grew. My parents' refusal to help, their cold dismissal of my situation, weighed on me like a stone in my chest. The fact that strangers, people who didn't even know me, cared enough to help while my own flesh and blood turned their backs, broke something inside of me. I felt worthless. I felt invisible. So I pushed through. My heart broke over and over again with each donation, each message of support from strangers, and every ounce of energy I had to expend to keep my baby alive. The surgery was still out of reach, but I refused to stop. I couldn't. She needed me. And no matter how alone I felt, I was determined to do whatever it took. Through all the pain, all the frustration, and all the tears, there was one thing I knew. I wasn't giving up. My baby's life depended on me and I would fight for her, even if it meant fighting alone. The day the surgery was over was the first time in what felt like forever that I could finally breathe. My baby had made it through. She was safe. The doctor came into the waiting room with a smile that I would never forget, his words like music to my ears. "She's out of surgery and everything went well. We expect a full recovery." For a moment time stood still. The weight that had been crushing me, the fear, the panic, it all lifted. I could finally breathe without that sharp ache in my chest. My baby was going to be okay. That was all that mattered. I rushed into the recovery room, my heart racing as I saw her lying there, still groggy from the anesthesia. But as soon as I held her in my arms, she looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes. And for the first time in weeks, I saw the tiniest glimmer of a smile on her face. Tears filled my eyes as I kissed her forehead, feeling her tiny fingers wrap around mine. "You're going to be okay," I whispered through the tears, my voice shaky but filled with relief. "I did it. We did it." As I held her, my heart swelled with a mixture of joy and grief. The joy that my baby was going to be okay, that the worst was over and I could take her home soon. But there was also the grief of realizing what I had been through to get here. The pain of seeing how little support I had received from the people I thought would always be there for me. Strangers had stepped up when my own family refused. The kindness of those who donated, who shared my story, who gave me hope when I had none. That was what had kept me going. But the people who should have been there, my parents, had turned their backs on me in my time of need. They couldn't even find it in themselves to help their own granddaughter, and that hurt in a way I couldn't fully explain. As I looked down at my baby, I realized something. I would never forget who had stood by me and who hadn't. But that didn't matter now. My baby was going to live. And as long as I was her mother, that was all I would need. In that moment, nothing else mattered. I was holding my baby, and that was everything. The days after the surgery were filled with the sweet relief of knowing my baby was going to be okay. But as time went on, a new feeling began to fester inside me, something I couldn't ignore no matter how hard I tried: rage. It started small, just little annoyances at first. My parents, still living in my home, acting as if everything was fine. They didn't even acknowledge the pain they had caused me, the betrayal that still cut deep. They ate my food, used my utilities, and walked around like nothing had happened, like they hadn't turned their backs on me when I needed them most. It felt like a slap in the face every time I heard them talking about mundane things, as if they hadn't just abandoned me during the most desperate time of my life. They went about their day as if they hadn't just refused to help me save my baby. It was infuriating. There were moments when I couldn't hold back the resentment that bubbled inside me. I'd be in the kitchen preparing dinner, and my dad would sit at the table, casually flipping through the newspaper. My mom would ask me how the baby was doing, her voice casual, like she was asking about the weather. Not once did they express any remorse or offer a single word of apology for their actions. I started to feel like I was trapped in my own home, with no escape from the constant reminder of their indifference. It was as if they had no idea what they had done to me, to my family. They had used me, and now they were living under my roof like nothing had changed. They were acting like nothing had happened, but everything had changed. My patience began to wear thin, and with each passing day the rage grew. They seemed to think they were entitled to my space, my home, my life, after everything they had done. It was as if they had no shame, no understanding of the gravity of what they had put me through. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I was living in the same house as people who had abandoned me when I was at my lowest. How could they be so indifferent? How could they be so selfish? I knew I couldn't keep going on like this. Something had to change. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let them continue to take advantage of me. It was a quiet morning. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft glow through the kitchen window. I stood there, staring at the coffee brewing, my hands shaking slightly, not from fear but from the weight of the moment I knew had finally come. I had rehearsed this conversation in my head 100 times, but this time I wasn't going to back down. My parents walked in like they did every day, completely unaware that this morning wouldn't be like the others. My mother asked if I wanted toast. My father mumbled something about the news. And that was it, the casual, thoughtless routine of two people who had no idea how deeply they had hurt me. I turned around and looked at them. My voice was calm, steady but firm. "We need to talk," I said. They both looked up, surprised. "About what?" my father asked, raising an eyebrow. I took a breath and spoke slowly so they couldn't miss a word. "You left me when I needed you the most. When my baby was fighting for her life, you told me it wasn't your problem. And yet here you are, living under my roof, eating my food, acting like none of it happened." They both went quiet. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. "I begged you," I continued. "I was broken. I was terrified. And you walked away. Now I need you to do the same again, walk away. I want you to leave this house today." Their faces changed, confusion, then shock, and finally disbelief. "You're serious?" my father said. I nodded. "Yes. Just like you left me in my darkest moment, I need you to leave now. I won't live another day sharing space with people who chose my brother's wedding over my daughter's life. They started to argue, to explain, to soften the blame. But I didn't let them. I stood tall, not angry, not emotional, just done. This is not your home anymore, I said quietly. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. And with that, I walked away, leaving them in silence. It was finally over. The moment they walked out, a calm silence filled the house. For the first time in months, I felt peace. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending everything was okay. Just me and my baby, safe and free from the weight of betrayal. I walked into her room, picked her up and held her close. Her little fingers curled around mine and I whispered, "You'll never feel what I felt. You'll grow up knowing what real love feels like. I promise." This was my house, my rules, and from now on only love and loyalty would live here.